What's up guys? Before we get into this video, I just wanted to give you all a fair warning. When I started filming this tune, it was intended to literally be a video where I didn't have to talk at all. I planned to do just a visual of the car, quick tune, put some things in captions. I really would like to start doing that for a few cars that come through the shop. Anyway, this car ended up being an absolute, just a mess. Just of us fault finding. It had us completely stumped for quite a while. And I did debate on whether to release this video or not. The whole time that I was making it, the whole time that I was even filming it. And the only reason that I'm sort of releasing it is because I feel like probably there's a lot of really good information in here for a lot of people who might, get some value out of it. So I figured I would release it anyway, because I figured there's probably a few people out there that would get some value out of what you're about to watch and about the fault finding process and a few things to avoid and help you maybe with your own build. But just a fair warning, it's quite a lot of talking and not a lot of action. So just wanted to let you know that before we get into it, and hope you enjoy it. Alright, so the tune the other day on this thing was cut short by a map sensor fault. Now this is an easy trick to catch out new players. It's been made, we obviously see it quite a bit being tuners. There's one thing we always say to people is that when it comes to things like injectors or sensors for your ECU and stuff, you need to buy good quality gear from reputable dealers that you know is legitimate. Like I said, it's an easy trick to catch out new people, new players. You find the same thing 30-40 bucks cheaper on eBay. It's the same part number. Ute, or grab that, save myself some money, and then it doesn't work. So this was meant to be a genuine Delphi 2-bar map sensor. Once we started getting that up to positive pressure, over 1 bar, it was just not reading. It was, what was it, just carking it at 70 kPa or something?
No, 105.
105 kPa. So directly atmospheric, just wouldn't read anymore.
Yeah, at 1 exactly 0.
So this is the map sensor we pulled out of it. This is Delphi map sensor, right? You look at that. This has been sitting at idle because we had to order a map sensor because we didn't have a 2-bar in stock. And this is the new one that showed up this morning. This is supplied by our boy there, Jay, at Brisbane Fuel Injection Services, so we know it's legit. But look at that. You'll be hard pressed to notice any differences. But the difference is, one came from Jay, reputable dealership, genuine Delphi 2-bar map sensor. This, cheaper one off eBay, and didn't work. Held up the tune. So it held up us for a number of days while we had to wait for a new 2-bar map sensor. It held up the tune, so the owner didn't get to have his car tuned on the day that it was meant to and get it back. So just wanted to stop and point that out. We do say it quite often. We swear by it all the time when it comes to things like injectors and sensors. Buy from a reputable dealer, buy genuine stuff. They're just one of those things. You can't get away with cheaper things like that. But anyway, nonetheless, we're going to continue on with this this patrol. I had planned to make this entire video without my gob talking in it at all. But I just wanted to pause and let you know about that because it is very important information for everyone to know and understand. Bit more talking in this video, sorry guys, but after we finally got that map sensor sorted, we had an issue with this thing leaking fuel out of the injectors. So this back injector just started really badly leaking fuel. It was progressively getting really bad. The more we went on, we tried sorting it a few different ways. What we ended up doing was pulling the rail off and had a look at it. And it actually turned out that the rail on that side was just bent up just a little bit at the end. And just the way that these injectors sit into the manifold without the plastic retainer on it that the stock ones have, it just allows them to go just a little bit further into the manifold, which allows them to come just a little bit further out of the rail. And it was just enough that they come out far enough with that little bit of a bend that it was just coming out just enough for the fuel to push past the O-ring in the rail. So we ended up putting a different rail on it. We swapped the rail for one of our rails that's not bent. So we finally got that sorted. And then after that, we finally got it running up and it started to spit the belt. And that again progressively got worse as we put it on. And we pretty much put it down to a misalignment. Now the customer has made his own high mount AC kit here. He's done a really good job, but it's just a little bit too far back. So we're just going to work on spacing that forward to try and realign this belt a bit better. And we've got a new belt on the way, which we can go and get this morning. And then hopefully we'll finally be able to get this tune sorted. So now we're into day 3 of this 1-day tune. It's this is the sort of thing that you often don't see with tuners and places you go, is the amount of problems we usually have to overcome. And it's one of those things where, because we're tuners, we always get cars sort of at the end of their road, at the end of the build. We usually have the last stop before the finish of the build. So all of those teething issues and stuff are usually found on the dyno. And unfortunately, it just is a consequence of building cars and what we do. There's not really much else we can do about it. So just working on getting this thing sorted just so we can get the tune sorted and get it back to the customer, because it's going to be a bucket of fun. This thing's just going to be so cool. Alright guys, I know what you're thinking. Will this guy ever just shut up and do a video where he doesn't talk? Anyway, more issues with the Patrol. We've got our fuel rail and everything else sorted. That's all good. But we've just had issues. This thing is not behaving the way it should be. So this has got a Borg Warner S366 with a T4. We're working it out. It was a 110 housing. 0.91. So it's a 0.9 AR T4 T66. S366, sorry. So this thing should be acting like our 80 series. This thing should be like on gate, like straight away. 5.7 litre with that sort of turbo. This thing should be no mucking around. We should be seeing pretty much almost on gate by 3,000 RPM at the very latest. We expect around 2,500 RPM, similar to our 80 series, the way it is. But that's not what we're seeing. This thing, we're having issues with lag. It's not coming on the gate until about 4,000 RPM, which is what you'd expect out of something like a GT42 or something like that. And yeah, it's just not behaving the way it should be. So we were chasing forever. We've spent another whole day just chasing, trying to find any sort of restrictions, anything we can find that would, make this happen. We checked to make sure that the gate has the seal seat in it, the seat for the seal ring. We've been through everything, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. We can't figure it out. We've got a 3-inch silicon joiner elbow down here. It's one of the only sort of silicon elbows on the car. Everything else is sort of fabbed up with straight joiners, which is good. But this silicon bend is just, it feels terrible. Like, it's terrible quality. Like very thin walled, very, very bad quality. So, it doesn't physically look like it's ballooning or doing anything funny, but for anyone who's ever popped one or split one open, you've seen the construction and how they're made. I reckon if you had a really bad quality one, you could leak air through it without it physically looking damaged or doing anything like that, just through the little orifices in the silicon. Although, you know, once again, you're talking about how much air's flowing into a 5.7 litre to make, we're sort of seeing about 6 pound. That's a lot of airflow. So it's crazy to think that we would actually leak enough air out of something like that without any physical damage that it could cause a problem. However, given the fact of where that silicon elbow is, right in that wheel well where it's exposed and close to the wheel, it's not going to hurt putting just a decent quality elbow on it anyway, just to try it and see if that's our problem. So we're both pretty dubious as to whether that's the issue, but at the moment, aside from actually pulling the turbo out of the housing and inspecting the rear turbine wheel, this is the last thing we've pretty much got that we can try, because we've tried everything else. So we were actually at Matsuri over the weekend. We managed to get decent quality Raceworks 3-inch bend from Kingsley there at the MSA stall at Matsuri. So a big thank you to Kingsley. So we're going to try that, but if that doesn't work, we'll be pulling this turbo out of the housing and have a look at the rear wheel, because something's not right. It's just not the way it should be behaving. And you know, sure enough, you could just, oh yeah, whatever, just tune it, do what it wants and send it out the door, but it's not right, and we're not about that. It's meant to be doing a certain thing and it's not doing that thing, so we've got to figure out why. All right, so as we sort of expected, that didn't really make much difference. Made a little bit of difference, but like I was saying, we're losing a lot of air somewhere. We've been all over the compressor side. We can't see any restrictions or leaks that should be doing what this thing is doing. So at this stage, it's now turned to pull the core out of the housing and have a look at this turbine wheel. And the other thing we want to do is just pull the top hat off the gate, because we haven't done that yet, just to see what's going on inside the gate, diaphragm sort of thing. Not that I reckon it's probably any issue with the gate. Like we said, we pulled the gate off, made sure the seal ring was in there. It's more so just to double check exactly what's going on inside where the diaphragm is, see what springs in there and what's going on. But I do know of and have seen of a lot of Borg-Warner turbos for a good period of time there, actually showing up damaged with damaged turbine wheels due to the way that they were actually packaging the turbos. They weren't protecting the exhaust wheels properly. Someone made a big post about it. There was a big thing that went around, and actually Borg-Warner actually changed the way that they package the turbos. So I do know that it is sort of fairly common for these things to actually have some damaged turbine wheels, some damaged fins and stuff like that. So it's worth checking that, because it seems to be now that is the last point of call, because there's no restrictions on the intake side, there's no leaks, there's no exhaust leaks obvious enough to be doing what this is doing. Like, this is quite a significantly bad leak to be doing what it's doing. The actual exhaust system is free flowing, plenty big enough. There's not really any restrictions in the exhaust side that we could see or know of. So we're sort of just getting to the point where it's got to be like this turbine wheel or something. So, all right, guys, we are really starting to run out of ideas with this thing, which is why I thought I'll continue to film, because it's not often that a car will come here and have us completely stumped, which means either we're not going to get to the bottom of it, or we're all going to learn. So hopefully it's the latter. Either way, we've been trying a fair few things. One thing we did sort of notice was that where we've got the crossover pipe for the driver's side bank here, it's all 2¼ inch, which is all well and good. That's sort of big enough, but just after the V-band, before it goes up to the actual collector, it does have a reducer down to 1 7/8. So we've got pretty much 4 primaries on the passenger side, which are 1 7/8, all going into the collector. And then the primary for the entire other bank is only 1 7/8 as well, that's going into the collector, which is significantly smaller. Well, you know, considering you've got 4 cylinders for the same size as the rest are all 1. So that sort of pointed towards what could be the problem. Even then, as we talked about, at low RPM, it shouldn't make that much of a difference. You're talking about pretty much a restriction of flow, which wouldn't really be a problem until higher RPM, which we've figured out that it is, but it shouldn't stop this thing coming on boost the way it should at a lower RPM. You know, having that restriction there, as much as it'll affect power up in the top end and how it's going to behave in the top end, it shouldn't really make all that much difference as far as the fact that we should be seeing this thing spooling up around 2000 RPM sooner than it is. So either way, what we decided to do was pull the crossover off, put a 1/8 MPT bung in it so that we can actually log some EMAP on the crossover pipe for that bank. So we've got a canister here for EMAP. I knew that would be a handy thing to build. So it's coming in handy. So we're using that for some more data collation for what we're trying to figure out what's going on here. So that was all well and good. We've got that in. We've done some logging of some EMAP. We've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. It is a restriction. We are seeing very high EMAP towards the end, like the top of the red range. Although that is a problem, we have found this thing when you rev it right out, we're getting a fair bit of knock with hardly any timing, and that's going to be why that's happening. So that's sort of one issue, I suppose. We're not going to be able to get a heap of timing into this thing with that restrictive crossover, restricting up that bank. We're going to get knock before we can get much timing into it. But it doesn't explain why this thing's not spooling up when it should. So we have been through everything. I don't even know where to start explaining everything we've been through. We have just been fault finding like mad gooses. We've tried no gate reference at all. We've tried taking the boost T out of the reference and then running the reference straight to the top side of the gate, to the top side of the diaphragm, and ran this thing all the way out the back door, and we're still only making 9 pound, which is just not right. There's got to be a massive restriction somewhere. So not only are we not spool until 4,000, which is just wrong, we're only making 9 pound with the gate reference plumbed into the top side of the diaphragm to hold the gate shut. It's just not right. We pulled the core out of the housing. There's nothing wrong with the turbine wheel. Everything looks fine. It's doing our freaking head in. Absolutely doing our head in. Yeah, we've pretty much fault found everything that we could possibly fault find, and we're still not really any closer to figuring out. Well, we are closer, obviously, by process of elimination. We're still a lot closer, but we are running out of things to eliminate, and we still haven't come to a conclusion, which is very, very frustrating. Anyway, you can see over here, this red one is our EMAP, and this pink one is just with the top of the gate shut. So you can see we're making about 9 pound here. EMAP, at that point, we're sort of getting close to 20. Like, even that's not ridiculous. This running up the top, that is pretty ridiculous. We're down here at about 7-8 pound, and we're up here at about 23. So that is going to be a problem. You know, as far as all out power and top end and things like that go, that is going to be a problem. But like I said, it doesn't explain the issue we're having with this thing not coming on spool where it should be. It should be similar to our 80 series, where it should be coming up. You know, we should be at 6 pound here, 2500 RPM. This thing should just be on it. This should also be a pretty good reference for you guys as well. I know a lot of people think tuners make like a lot of money and they're really well off. You know, obviously it's not a bad gig, but something like this, we're now on like day 3 or 4, just fault finding for a tune that should really be, 1 day on the dyno and then a few days to get cold start and stuff right. You know, it's all well and good in theory when you think, hey, tune costs this much and I can probably smash out 1 a day, do your cold starts in the morning and then move on to the next tune. That's like 4, maybe 5 a week. You could do pretty well, but this is how the majority of them go. The majority of them go, a few days trying to sort stuff out and fix issues and wean out stuff. It is just basically what I'm trying to say is tuners aren't as well off as everyone makes them out to be. So the gate seems to be working, doing its job. We've pulled the top off the gate, checked the diaphragm and the springs. Doesn't appear to be any damage or anything wrong. We pulled the gate off. There's definitely a seal ring on the gate seat, so it should be sealing, should be doing its job. And we've tried the reference to the top of the diaphragm and the gate to hold it shut. So, it's not just boost pressure pushing the spring open, we're actually holding the gate shut with boost pressure to the top of the diaphragm. So even with the gate completely shut, we're still having this issue. We've got no intake on the turbo to eliminate the possibility of having a restriction in the the intake to the turbo. So we've removed that for the process of our fault finding to make sure that's not a factor. We've got no boost leaks that we can see. Definitely none that are leaking that much boost, causing this much of a problem. So can't see any boost leaks. We've got no exhaust leaks, no manifold leaks. Can't hear any tippity taps, nothing wrong with the manifolds. And as you can see, we've done some logging of the exhaust gas pressures on the very tight side, which is the smallest restriction in the manifold setup. And we found that although there is a restriction, it shouldn't be causing this particular issue. So the exhaust wheel's fine, everything seems to be fine. So as you can see, we're really running out of things to do. We've taken references for boost from a few different parts along the intake tract. Not just the manifold, we've also done it from in front of the throttle body and the intercooler and stuff like that. So yeah, Literally the only thing we haven't done is drop the exhaust. That is pretty much the last thing we've got to do. And the other thing I can think of is if it's the wrong housing for this exhaust wheel. That's the only thing we haven't measured up. We haven't actually measured up the housing versus the exhaust wheel. So unless it's just the completely wrong turbine housing for this wheel, which would be such a rare thing to happen, a weird thing to happen, it's just, I don't know. All right guys, so we pulled the muffler. We sort of didn't think it was gonna be a problem, but got to eliminate all possible, you know, possible problems. So we pulled the muffler. We did another run back to back, IMAP versus EMAP, exactly the same result. And you know, we did just to make sure the muffler wasn't collapsed or anything, but muffler's fine. Look straight down it. From where the muffler joins, can look straight up the dump pipe. There's no restrictions in it at all, and everything else seems fine. So had the exact same results. Didn't even help the EMAP on that crossover even a little bit. Tracked the exact same path. At this stage, the only thing it can be is that crossover, that small crossover, giving us a real problem as far as restriction in flow, which again, we sort of figured would be a problem, but we didn't think it would be a problem so early on in the rev range, but it very well might be, because it's about the only thing that makes sense. But even them, at those sort of runs, we've only got 6 degrees of timing in it. That's 6 PSI IMAP. So 6 PSI boost, 6 degrees of timing, and it reckons it's getting knock. So, you know, there's something very wrong. That is very much not much timing for it to be having a problem with knock. So it definitely appeared that that restriction in that crossover is causing us a magnitude of issues. So I suppose it's pretty much where we're going to have to point this issue to. The cause of it is going to have to be that crossover, because we've eliminated everything else. It's been a long ass few days to sort it out, but yeah, like I said, once you actually scale this down, you know, 3000 RPM, we should pretty much be seeing not even a 1-to-1. That's not a lot of RPM. It's not a lot of exhaust gas for, you know, for this, even this size turbo, we should be seeing maybe just over a 1-to-1 realistically. So the fact that we're seeing almost a 2-to-1 at such low RPM, maybe it very well is that restrictive crossover. As much as you wouldn't really think it would be at such low RPM, you'd think it shouldn't affect it too much before it really starts getting some exhaust energy for it to really start backing up, but apparently it does. Apparently it does, because there's no other freaking causes with this thing. We've been over it and over it and over it and over it. Anyway, even though it's time consuming and lengthy, at least we can sleep well at night knowing that we go through everything and we try everything. We eliminate everything that could be a contributing factor. And unfortunately, it looks like it's just going to be that. I was going to put it in writing in this video. Like I said, I was going to try and make this video a whole video where I didn't talk, but we've ended up this not going smoothly. I was hoping this would just be a one-day tune, a little bit of a film, put a few things in captions so you know what was going on. Nice little short and sweet video. Absolutely not the case. But anyway, this is a rods and pistons 5.7, so forged 5.7. So, you know, happy to push 500 plus horsepower with this setup. That's probably around when we're going to start maybe running out of puff on the 366, maybe 550 wheel on 98. So no E85, but we're definitely not going to go get there with this setup. So alrighty guys, so as you can see, we've got the mighty GU back. So we ended up coming to a conclusion last time that the crossover pipe where it merges actually into the collector for the turbo was too small. It had a reducer. So the owner took it back, fixed that up, brought it back, really quick turnaround. He got that smashed out. So it's now, I think 2 inch all the way to the collector. 2.25 inch. So now we're sweet for that bank, for that crossover, which is awesome. But we started running it up and we had still it pretty much behaving very similarly to what it was doing before. It is much nicer. But we're still having the same issue where for the size of this turbo and for what this engine is, this thing is not behaving the way that it should be. It's not doing that. It's still being laggy and then it's still falling off real hard up top, which is, it's just not right. So what we did, we pulled the turbo housing off just to make sure, you know, last time it was here, we pulled the core out of the housing just to check the turbine wheel. But this time we actually pulled the turbine housing off to ensure that there wasn't any like big dags in the casting on one of the scrolls or something that might be, you know, for some reason choking it up or doing something. When he modified the crossover into the collector, he actually put a 1/8 MBT port in the collector for us so that we have EMAP port in the actual collector. One thing we did notice when we pulled the housing off is that the actual flange on the collector is a little bit smaller than the T4 housing. Like, you know, there's a little bit of a restriction there, but it definitely doesn't seem like it should be enough to be causing us the sort of problems that we're having. But regardless, while we had it all apart, we decided to put ports, one in the actual turbine housing. So we've got one in the collector, now we've got one in the housing. So now we can check if there's a discrepancy between the two and see whether it's that flange that's actually causing us a back pressure issue. We also decided to put one in the compressor housing because we don't thus far yet have any ports on this side of the intercooler, or the turbo side of the intercooler, to check intake pressure before the intercooler and after. We did, last time I was here, pull all the intake pipes off and just have a look physically at the intercooler, and it looked fine, but you never know. So anyway, we put a port in the turbine, in the compressor housing, so we can check pressure before and after the cooler now. And we also put a port in the dump pipe so we can actually check exhaust gas pressure after the turbine. So that is pretty much all of the data you could possibly need to get. And it's pretty much it's our last ditch effort to try and see what we can get out of all this data to try and figure out what's wrong. Because physically, visually, just looking it through the intake tract, everything seems fine. We've looked down the exhaust when we dropped the muffler last time, everything seems fine. It all seems straight through. Dropping the muffler didn't make a difference last time, so yeah. We put these ports on, we'll do a few tests, and hopefully we can come to a conclusion as to why this thing's not behaving the way that we believe that it should be. The only other thought that we had was potentially maybe cam timing, but we've spoken to the engine builder. They're pretty confident that it's not. We know them very well. They're obviously a very good engine builder, so can't imagine that they would, that would be a problem. The other thing is the way that it's behaving, where it seems really laggy, but then up top it's falling off, is not typical of cam timing, being out, I'd say. So I'd say, usually it'd be one or the other. Usually it'd spool real quick, but then it'd fall over up top, or it'd be real laggy and hold on up top. But for it to be real laggy and then fall over up top is just really, really strange for this setup. So see what we can do, see what data we can collate. While the owner was fixing up the crossover pipe, he also put like T-bolt clamps everywhere and tightened a few things up. So thing is looking Mickey Mouse now. Very schmick. It's really cool. I'd love to build something like this one day. It'd just be so much fun to go fanging up the beach and stuff. Just manual turboed LS patrol like this. Be a ball of fun. Definitely putting my little creation to use. Got heaps of use out of it now. All right, guys, we are pretty much officially out of ideas here. So this is all our data collation, right? So the squiggly lines here, that's at the manifold. So as you can see, we're not sort of hitting gate until like 4 grand. We should be seeing that sort of boost back here at like 2.5. Should not be that lazy on this thing. So the smooth red line here, that's the port we put in the actual compressor housing. So that's at the compressor housing versus the actual manifold. As you can see, there's hardly any difference. Actually quite impressive. So doesn't seem to be any sort of restriction in the intake tract. Intercooler doesn't seem to be restrictive at all. That all seems to be fine. So these two here are our exhaust. So the blue one is actually in the collector. That's the port that the owner actually put in the collector for us when he fixed everything up. And the pink there is the one that we put in the housing. So as you can see, it's a little bit of a difference, which would mean that that flange is creating a little bit of a restriction up here higher in the RPMs. But as you can see, it's really nothing that's gonna make a huge difference. Certainly not enough that it is the problem. That's not enough of a difference for us to confidently say that that is an issue. So there's that. So then we've got the red, which is the port that we actually put in the dump pipe. As you can see, there is just no restriction in the dump pipe at all. So we've got no dump pipe restriction, no real restriction in the intake that we can see, and the difference between the actual housing and the collector is hardly any difference as well. And we're still running like a 3-to-1 back pressure ratio, or IMAP ratio. So anyway, that's basically our big data collation from basically these manifolds should not be restrictive. The crossover shouldn't be restrictive any longer. We're getting the exhaust pressure actually in the collector and in the housing. So it's definitely something, basically this versus this says that it has to be this exhaust wheel. It has to be this exhaust wheel and this housing combo. There's nothing else it can be. It's not a massive cam. It's on a 114 lobe separation, so it's quite a big lobe separation. We can't figure it out. We're out of ideas. I don't know. So another thing that can happen every now and then, these plastic manifolds can split. It does happen, which would cause a massive boost leak under positive pressure, which, you know, it would explain the boost situation, but it doesn't particularly explain the exhaust gas buildup situation. Is the housing just this small? Does it just make that much back pressure, but it should just be making 20 pound while it's doing that? And that would bring the the pressure ratio down. So here is currently our plan for what we're gonna do. I'm gonna tell you guys now because I won't be here to do it. Rex is gonna have to do it tomorrow. I gotta go to the coast. Partner's got an operation, etc., etc. Easter, things like that. Anyway. So, firstly, Rex is gonna pull the intake manifold off and confirm that it's not split, just so we can rule that out. Just for peace of mind. We don't believe that it is. We reckon if we had that big of a boost leak, we would have had other problems as well. But it's worth doing just to rule it out. That's one thing checked off the list. Righto guys, I'm back here real quick in just between running around, not actually working today. My missus now has this operation today, so I've got to go back down the coast to take her to the hospital. You wouldn't believe how much we've been messed around by Queensland Health. Anyway, so yeah, she's been out of this operation a few days ago. Anyway, regardless, whatever. I just wanted to film a little bit of what actually happened with this while I was on the coast. Rex kept on endeavoring to figure out what was going on. Boost leak tests, all sorts of things. Could spit here for an hour and talk about what happened. But what it ended up coming down to was actually a massive boost leak, which is one of the things we had considered, but we thought it wouldn't really make sense with the back pressure. But as I did state when we talked about it being a boost leak, is that obviously the pressure differential will be a lot different even if it was making that, 29 PSI back pressure, if it was still making 20 PSI of intake pressure. So it does sort of make sense, but we were under the impression that if we had a boost leak that bad, the thing wouldn't even be running. Like, it was pretty bad. And we did a boost leak test previously, and it was fine. And usually you do a boost leak test, you pull it off the throttle body. We have found actually, for anyone wondering, Nescafe lids happen to fit directly into a 3-inch joiner perfectly. You can use them to do boost leak tests. They're perfect. But we didn't find any boost leaks in the intake tract. We did that quite a while ago. Anyway, we went on this. Rex was just continued to pretty much endeavor to figure out what was going on, because there was definitely something wrong with it. We didn't get as far as changing the turbo over, but what he did find was that it was the intake manifold. So he decided to do the boost leak test for the intake manifold. He pulled all the rockers off, like all the coils, everything off, undid all of the rockers, pulled all the rocker covers off and loosened all the rockers so that all the valves were closed, and did the boost leak test through the actual intake manifold and found that it was just not holding anything. So he went to pull the intake manifold off. Firstly, he found that it wasn't tight. Secondly, he found that there were no O-rings in the intake manifold. And lastly, and probably most impressively, we could see that crack. As I talked about, it does happen. LS manifolds, they do crack. This one has obviously been cracked. Obviously, someone knew it was cracked because it's been painted bright yellow. So we've been talking to the owner of the car and the engine builder. It seems that there was some sort of miscommunication. Something went up there. It appears that this was given to the owner as sort of a dummy manifold to mock up his setup and make his intake. And apparently then he was given a different one. It sort of would explain maybe why that one had the bent rails as well. Probably something's happened to that, it's bent that rail. But anyway, however, it doesn't really matter. Fact is, we know it's wrong now when Rex has put a new manifold in this thing with O-rings, and we're all sorted. So this thing is going awesome. It is responding exactly how it should be now. All that Rex has to do is finish the tune, which he's going to do today. So I will let you know the results today before I sign off the video. Anyway guys, when I started this video, it was meant to be a video where I didn't talk at all. The video was only meant to be pretty much a visual, this car and then the tune. I want to start doing a few of those sorts of videos on cars, particularly like this, which are quite impressive setups and pretty cool, where you don't have me flabbergasting and babbling and talking at you, and you can actually just watch a tune happen and hopefully be all right. But there were plenty of instances through this video where I just had decided I wasn't going to post it and I stopped filming, and then eventually I decided I was going to post it and I'd start filming again. So there's probably a few missing pieces. And the reason that I want to post this video is mostly so that you are aware, this thing came in on the day. It was meant to be just a single day tune. He had planned to bring it here, hang around while we tune the car. He wasn't too worried about the cold start. I was happy to load it up in the afternoon and take it home. A lot of people do ask us for that. And it is fair enough that people want to do that, particularly the fact that we're quite a ways out. It's pretty annoying for someone to have to drop a car here and leave it for 3 days and then come and pick it up. So I do understand, but it is important that you understand that just about never, ever in our entire tuning career have we ever had a car come here and just gone on the dyno and everything's gone right, and it's just been fine for a single day. Like that pretty much never happens. Happens sometimes with these things, like simple cam swap setups, you know, generally all right. Particularly stock injectors, you know, sometimes you can get away with one day, but generally always stuff like this happens. So we'll go just a little bit of a rundown on what actually happened, because I can't remember what I've actually filmed and when I stopped filming. So day one, we had map sensor issues, got a new map sensor. Day two, injector rail issues. The injector rail was bent, pushing the O-ring out, squirting fuel everywhere, not a fun time. Day three, having this issue of back pressure, and then that's when we figured out that you know, his full crossover was 2¼ inch, which is all sweet, but where it actually went into the collector on the manifold was a 1 7/8. You've got pretty much a whole bank over 2.5 liters trying to go through a single 1 7/8 collector in the port in the collector. It was too small. It was never going to work either way. We thought we'd figured out the problem was the back pressure on that bank. Because the other thing we have had problems with this is it's, for some reason, it's picking up heaps of noise. The knock sensors are picking up heaps of noise, which is really random and you know, inconsistent times. So we thought maybe it was a back pressure issue on one bank, which was causing knock on one bank. So we thought, you know, all of the problems correlated with that being the issue. And so we pretty much said to the owner, this is what we think is going on. Took it back, fixed it up. It's got 2¼ inch all the way to collector now. It's awesome. And while he had it apart, he put a 1/8 WT port in the actual collector so we could log back pressure at the collector as well, which was awesome. So then it comes back. So we're on day 4 now, or day 5, whatever it is. And we're still going through these issues, still going all these ports we had to put on, all of this fault finding. Oh, actually I did forget, day 1 it rocked up here. We had no intake air temp sensor, which is a requirement. If you're deleting the MAF on an LS, you have to put an intake air temp sensor in. LS1s had an intake air temp sensor in the airbox as well as the MAF. The Gen 4s, the MAF has built-in intake air temp. So when you delete the MAF, you actually need to get a patch lead and an intake air temp sensor, and the patch lead goes from your existing MAF plug, and it patches just to an intake air temp sensor. But it is needed because when you delete the MAF, you're going away from mass airflow and going into what we call speed density, or SD. Speed density is air pressure in the manifold. However, it's called density for a reason. The ECU is calculating the density. It doesn't go off the raw pressure. And the biggest component of determining how a density is going to change at a given pressure is going to be the temperature of the air. So that's why when you delete the MAF and you go into speed density, you need to have an intake air temp sensor, because the ECU needs to know how hot the air going in is so it can calculate what the density of the air in the manifold is at that pressure. So very important. So we welded in a bung, did the intake air temp sensor. We did have issues with this popping off as well. He did have hose clamps. When he went and did the new crossover, he actually replaced them with T-bolts. So anyway, again, as I always say, guys, I'm not here to rag on anything. This build is freaking awesome. I'm quite jealous. I'd love to have it. I think it's going to be an absolute animal on the beach. It's going to be sick. It's going to come on just like our cruiser does, but it's a manual and it's a ute, and it's just going to be a ball of fun. But I just want you to understand and know how much of these little things eat so much time. It's just one of those things, educational things for you guys to look out for, things of the reasons why we don't particularly like to do single day tunes. We don't like people asking for them. Usually it's just bring it here and we'll see how we go. If we get it done, sweet, but generally this is what happens. So this in total now has taken up 6 days of dyno time in all of the problems we've had to fault find. It's been here twice, and it's only just now finally going to get the tune finished off. So all this is just a little bit of an insight for you guys to see how this goes. But anyway, I'll let you know the results before we sign off. And yeah, this thing's going to be an animal. All right, guys, so sorry I'm not at the workshop. I can't show you the dyno graph or anything, but Rex did get it all finished off. We ended up at 510 horsepower at the wheels. Fairly conservative, as we expected. Really awesome curve, much like the cruiser. You know, boost straight away. It's pretty awesome. So a lot of people knock those turbos, saying they're way too small for those engines, but when you're in a car that's that sort of heavy, they actually respond really well. We've seen heaps of patrols with similar sized turbos. You know, S366, S369, you know, they're quite a good size. They respond really well, similar to the cruiser. A lot of people reckon that the twin GDX 2867s, I think we've got on the cruiser, a lot of people were knocking them, saying they're going to be way too small, but we got exactly what we wanted out of that thing. So it's making 510 because it's sort of, I think Rex was putting about 12 PSI into it, and by the end of the run it's tapering off and off to about 8 pound. Because it's only got a boost T on it. If we had something like a e-boost, an electronic boost controller, we could probably actually jam a bit more duty cycle in up top, and we reckon it'll probably make around 520, 530. You know, which is pretty awesome. It's pretty staunch. That thing, manual, patrol, thing's gonna be a weapon. It's gonna be so much fun. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. You're probably wondering why I put my seatbelt on again. It's because I threw some rubbish out of the car. Thanks for watching. Oh, I didn't close the gate. I'm gonna have to go get it. Halfway to the gate and the wind blew it shut anyway. But anyway, thanks for watching. As always, smash like, smash subscribe. And again, sorry for a lot of this video being pretty much a complete kerfuffle and all over the place with what was going on. But again, I just wanted you to see what is really the reality of what we do, because a lot of people have these ideas of what it's like to do this, and a lot of the time it's not at all what it's like. So I just thought it was pretty important for you all to see the reality of what goes on. Anyway guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next ones. Peace out, see you, bye.